all too often, I work with companies that are adopting new technology, and they tend to give that to the younger people in the organization because, you know, they are closer to the technology, they speak the language, they live in that world, and that's great. But we need to make sure in this transition over the next 8 years or so that all the wisdom of the past 30 years or so of dealing with customers, what customers expect, what happens in good times, what happens in bad times, that gets built into the new systems that we make. I realized this in a story, actually, that I saw very early on. The first book I wrote about Silicon Valley was a novel, not a nonfiction book. And when you write a novel, it's like doing a nonfiction book. You study the industry a lot, but you also need to get to know the people. So I gave a lot of dinner parties. And at one of these dinner parties, the guest of honor was an older gentleman who had already made a tidy fortune in the personal computer industry. And everybody else was liberal arts. There was a lawyer and a doctor, Stanford professor. And at the end of dinner, my friend from Silicon Valley said he just built a mansion in the hills above Silicon Valley. And he was an engineer, very smart, and he had built audio light switches for his mansion. Very advanced for the time. You walked into the room, he said, turn on, lights turn on, turn off, lights turn off, dim. Each time he said dim, they came down a step. Very sophisticated. He loved them. So did his 5-year-old grandson. Came to visit, got audio light switches right away. Took to him like a duck to water, then got sent to the other set of grandparents' house who did not have audio light switches. So the first night, second set of grandparents find this 5-year-old standing in a darkened hallway, shouting at the light, turn on, turn on. And my friend told this story, and he leaned across the table and he said, and that is a young man who will grow up believing anything is possible. And there was just silence around the table, and I know what everyone else was thinking. That is a young man who will grow up not knowing how to turn on the lights. And I think right in there, between my friend's great optimism about what the future can bring and everyone else's real fears about what might be lost in the process, that's where all of we practical futurists have our work to do. Ease of use is a problem that Silicon Valley has never solved. I mean, it's always baffled me. I've followed Silicon Valley for decades. The smart guys and gals in Silicon Valley never figured out that easy to use means easy to use, right? I mean, if I try to use something and fail, and then you come along and say, oh, it's really easy to use, hey, it's too late, right? That's like explaining a joke. But over and over, I mean, not to pick on Steve Jobs, but I remember in 1984 when he introduced the Macintosh computer. He got up in front of the audience and he said, we are going to make the computer as easy to use as the telephone. What did we do? We made the telephone impossible to use. I mean, how many of you can transfer a call at work? Okay, I'm going to try to transfer you, but if I lose you, call back, right? So it goes on and on like that. And so when we create new systems, we have to make sure that they're tested by the least technically adept person who is likely to use them. Software engineers, interface designers really aren't the ones to make the final decision. And they will be very frustrated when you come back and say, Aunt Edna cannot figure this out. But it's time to go back to the drawing board then. And it can be done. There is so much power in the processors, in the cloud that we have now, way more power than we actually need. That power needs to be used for natural interfaces and very, very easy to use. Learning to identify your organization's immune system. And this sort of comes from the human body, where our immune system is just an amazing set of actors, different cells, different processes that go out and fight, you know, microbes and bacteria and viruses. It's a miracle of nature. Well, companies develop immune systems too. And traditionally they kept out bad foreign ideas, which was usually a good thing to keep out because they'd be wasting money, they'd besmirch your reputation. Today, though, innovative ideas can look a lot like things that the immune system wants to attack. And you see that over and over again. And like the human body, the immune system in companies has many actors. And I'll just give you a couple examples because I can't offend everyone in the audience at one time. Lawyers, corporate lawyers, rarely get fired for saying no. I worked with a corporate lawyer once. I had to say to him, do not say no until I finish talking. But then, when he said no, I'd say, you're absolutely right. Let's just be hypothetical. How would we do this if we did it? Another one is salespeople. And this is a surprise. Salespeople like new and improved. They don't necessarily like brand new. We certainly saw this in the print industry when we expected our print salespeople to go out and sell online. We trained them back and forth on online selling. They had the relationships with the customers. We thought this is going to work out really well. What happened in the privacy of the sale was they'd get the print sale, and they'd have that in their pocket, and they'd think, you know, I'm not going to go out on a limb here. I'll do the online next time. Because a salesperson never likes to look like they don't know their product. And if there's any hesitation, there's that tendency to pull back. So you need to identify the immune system and deal with it. Ironically, sometimes the best way to deal with the immune system is to take a really new, innovative idea and make it look as much as possible like something you're already doing.